Hello, I'm Rosalind Esche of dearreader.blog. Welcome to our crime scene podcast, which focuses on crime fiction writers. Today's conversation is part 3 of a 4-part interview with Graham Bartlett, retired police officer turned author and advisor to crime writers, about his police career and his second calling as a writer. Graham and I met up in Goldsborough Books in Brighton, and I started by asking him about police cuts and their consequences, and how they influenced his debut novel, Bad for Good. So I want to talk to you about the cuts, and you mentioned that in relation both to your work, but also the book, because when I read the book, it comes over really powerfully, that frustration with cuts in the police, with the merger of different police authorities, everyone's stretched to the limit, and there's a really powerful feeling in that book that it's almost impossible to do as thorough a job as the police wants to do, and then of course you've got the plot where it leads to vigilantism, so I wanted to ask you about that and whether you think that is a real threat or whether you've actually experienced that and how you feel about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a real threat. I think, you know, the police are being not only cut to dangerous levels, I think, but also the expectation was being spread too thin. So they're forever dealing with mental health. They're dealing with, you know, basically non-police issues.
Social work.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and because they're 24/7. You know, they're the service of first and last resort. So, you know, I've not seen vigilantism on the scale that I portray in Bad for Good. Yeah, no, I mean, and it was supposed to be a kind of, you know, this could happen in the future.
Yes.
So, you know,
yes.
it wasn't. You know, it's not a kind of. It is a work of fiction, but you know, I can honestly see, you know, if things don't start to improve, that the public will just get fed up with calling the police and then not turning up, or, you know, not turning up quickly enough, or not having the resources to do a thorough job.
Yes.
And just think, you know what, we're going to take it into our own hands. We know who's making our life a misery on this estate. We send a couple of big boys round and sort them out. And I think that's a very real possibility. And it's it's obviously hugely scary.
It's very frightening. And also people think, the police can't be bothered to come round, but it's not that, is it? It's that they haven't got the resources.
They haven't, you know, and they, you know, you speak to them and they are literally run ragged. You know, they're not sitting around waiting for work. They're not kind of, you know, they rarely get a meal break. They're, you know, rarely off on time. You know, they're literally being, you know, run from pillar to post every day, every night.
And how many police down are they, if you can answer a question like that? I mean, what were the cuts? How many?
I think it's about 20%, something like that. I think, and it's worse. It was about 20%, which is a huge, you know, a huge number to cut. You know, is, you know, if you look at Sussex Police was 3,000, and 20%. So that would bring it down to what, 2,400. So, you know, I had. So I think my maths are right. So I had 600 police officers in Brighton and Hove. So that's 600 police officers you've removed. So basically, across Sussex, you've removed the entire police complement of Brighton and Hove. That, you know, you put it into those kind of numbers. But of course, what you also lose is and it goes back to an earlier question, is you lose a lot of experience. And so you have a lot of people. You can't make police officers redundant. So because they're not employees, they kind of hold an office. It's a kind of antiquated thing. They're not employees.
Sort of thing.
Yeah, so you can't make them redundant. There's no way to do that. What you can do is you can make them retire when they reach retirement age. So a lot of people were forced to retire when they might not have otherwise retired. And a lot of experienced people chose to leave as well because they just thought, you know, I just can't do this anymore. You know, it's just too.
So you lost all that experience.
You lost all the experience, and then you have these kind of we're gonna sort of invest, you know, however many hundreds, you know, millions of pounds or whatever in new police officers. Well, first of all you're doing is bringing it somewhere close to the numbers that it was before, but not when the cut started. And secondly, you're bringing in new people. So you're bringing in people that you're going to need to vet, train, deploy, develop, and then eventually promote.
That takes years.
Well, it takes sort of 15 years to get them. You know, if you're getting rid of people that that are, chief inspectors, to replace those, properly replace those, and all of the sort of air bubbles that causes through the system. It takes 15 years to do that.
And what about this merging of police authorities? I mean, that means you have fewer resources between them, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm not. I think there are some benefits of that. I think you have a system where you've got 43 police forces across the UK, including the Met and the City of London, so the two London forces there. And on each of those forces, with the exception of those two, you have a police and crime commissioner, which is an elected person who replaces police authorities. You have a chief constable, you have a group of chief officers, you have a director of finance, a director of HR, each of those forces. Now, some of those forces are huge. You take Major Manchester, I don't know what the numbers are, but huge, really, really busy, and probably warrant all of that. You have other forces that got 1,000 police officers, 1,500 police officers, tiny forces that still have that same infrastructure. So I think there is some benefits in merging some of these, structurally merging and creating some rationalisation at those higher levels, but not at the expense of the operational levels.
No, because in the book there's something about which officer is it who's driving from Kent? And
well, that again is looking into the future. But because at the moment Surrey and Sussex share their major crime team, which is where Jo, we first meet Jo in the book. She's head of major crime, so Surrey and Sussex. So I stretched it and put Kent and Hampshire on that. But just to kind of say, well, actually, it could be, you could have, if you had an officer that lives in Dover and they're, they pick up a murder in the New Forest, that's still on their patch. Yeah. It's going to take them most of the day to get there. So but now you could still, you could have an officer who's living in Woking or Guildford who's got to get to Hastings. That's still a long way. So there are issues with merging operational units, but I think the organisational support and I think there are opportunities to make savings there to reinvest at the operational level. Yeah.
What made you want to make your detective a woman? I'm interested in that.
Yeah, it was stupidity, because it was so hard. It was so hard to write, but I wanted to, obviously I'd done the role that Jo's doing. Yeah. Not in quite the same circumstances as she is, but I had done that role, and people know that I've done that role. I've been the divisional commander here, so I didn't want people to think, oh, this is just autobiographical. He's just basically, he's using it as a cathartic exercise, but also I did actually want to explore something about how it was different for women, both in terms of what they go through, but also what they offer. Because I am, what you would think was out of central casting of, a senior police officer. I'm a white, middle-aged, straight, middle-class bloke. Now I know what it's like to do this job. I did it for 4 years, but I don't know what it's like to do it as a woman. I think this might be a bit of a spoiler, but obviously we find out that Bob is gay. Yeah. I don't know what it's like to have lived my life, as a gay man, in a very traditional organisation.
I can leave that bit out, by the way, if you like.
Yeah, because it's a bit of a spoiler, is it? Yeah. But I don't know. So when I was writing Jo, I wanted to kind of explore a lot of that, and I wanted to but I also wanted to give her greater depth, and I think that there's more opportunity to do that with women. I think you're able to show their strengths better. I think they're you can authentically show their emotive response better, because they are do tend to be more honest with their emotions than blokes do. So there's a scene where she's kind of being vilified in the press after a press conference, and her husband Darren, who's a journalist, is going, look, it's still headlines, and she's going, no, but they all think I'm useless and all of that, and she's able to kind of say that kind of stuff, and But what I didn't appreciate, and I had a really, really useful person help me on this, who was a woman called Rosalind Esche, who was the divisional commander for East Sussex after I'd gone. And she's a wonderful, wonderful human being. She's just amazing. I've known her for donkey's years. She read it, and I thought she'd say, this, just do this here, tweak that there, tweak that there. But her reply to me was, I think we need a Zoom call. So it's like, oh my lord, I've been called to the head teacher's office. So we had this Zoom call, and essentially what she was saying is that you've got most of the external pressures just about right. You kind of understand that, it's harder. It was harder for me than it would have been for you. She said, it's there are challenges around childcare that you probably didn't have, even though we both both did it when we had young children. It's easier for me to kind of do a Darren and wander off and do my job than it was for her. Even though her husband is a fantastic bloke, he's a police officer and a really nice bloke. But she said what you haven't touched on at all is the internal pressures, the kind of the guilt, a lot of the imposter syndrome that she suffers came from Di. She's like thinking, I'm just somehow I've managed to sort of find my way into this role, but I'm not ready for it. And it's like when she says to Gary, people think you should have got the job, and maybe they're right, or something like that. She says, and she's and Di would say, that's the sort of thing that she'd be feeling. She's almost like, have I been put in this role as for tokenism rather than because of ability? It was so. I was delighted that Di sort of guided me on that, because I wanted to get that depth, and I wanted to be able to sort of and because it's a continuing story, and there's more books coming in it. I wanted to sort of I wanted to mine that even deeper. I want to in the second book.
And you can develop that.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting. So I was doing an event last night, and someone said that, and it was a real compliment. They said that you almost forget that it's written by a man because of the way I've done it, and that's not all me at all. That's that's the help that I had and the guidance that I had. But I when I decided to write her as that character as a woman, I kind of made a pact with myself to do it as well as possible and to really open my eyes and understand.
Yeah, well, that's a real accolade, isn't it? And it's true. I mean, you do think that you've done it really well.
Thank
you.
Really
well.
Thank you.
I was very impressed with that.
Thanks.
And what made you decide to write in the first place? Have you always wanted to write?
No.
Did that happen because you were helping other authors?
Yeah, no, it's Peter James's fault.
Yeah,
it was down to him. Yeah, I blame him. So So what happened? I was in my last sort of year or so in the police. The chief constable and the deputy chief constable were very keen on the divisional commanders, which is all I had, blogging. Everyone was into blogging. It was the beginning of blog. Twitter really had just come out. They wanted to get a bit of a social media presence and people blogging. So. Yeah, we're all up for that, and it's a good idea, a good way of getting your thoughts down, getting your voice out there.
Yes.
So I wrote a few blogs, published them, and
And you sent those to Peter, didn't you?
I sent them to Peter, and just because I really enjoyed it, and one of them, the Argus picked up, and they said, "Do you mind if we use this as a page 8, which is their guest page, or it was at the time," and it was about. I'll tell you what it was about. It was about running towards danger rather than away. And it was all connected with an off-duty Essex officer that got killed because he ran, because there was a knife man sort of in his street or something, and he ran, everyone else running away and he's running towards it. And I wrote a few hundred words on why someone would do that, and why the police do that, and why you kind of find yourself like in the middle of something and think, God, how did I get here? I'm in danger now. But and so I said to the Argus, I said, by all means, if you want to publish it, but I said I don't want you to edit anything out of it, because I don't want you to, there's a lot of meaning in there but I said if you want to improve the writing, the English or whatever, crack on, and they said no, it's absolutely fine as it is. So I thought, maybe I could write some articles or whatever when I leave the police. So I sent it to Peter, and Peter said actually you've got quite a good style. He said it's not commercial yet. He said, but you could really work with it. And then a couple of months later, he came up to me and said, been chatting with my agent and publisher, and would you write a non-fiction with me? Basically, stories, and it took off from there. So I started it, and it's a struggle to start.
Yes.
I really struggled to find my voice and get a rhythm going and all of that. But once I got into it, I absolutely loved it, and now it feels like a sort of second calling. Really, it's all I think about, sort of day in day out, which annoys my wife because I should be thinking about the shopping and the gardening and stuff like that.
You're just thinking,
and I'm just musing.
So Peter encouraged you and worked with you and spotted your talent and all of that. But how long had you been working with him before? How long had you been helping him before you got to that point?
Probably a couple of years, 3 years.
Okay.
He was.
And how did that happen?
Well, he already had a relationship with Sussex Police, and
Dave Gailey.
he was there through Dave Gailey, and when Dave left, it was, other people kind of took on the mantle, and because of the job I was doing, and he based his books in Brighton, it was very much a case of, in doing the role I did, it was. The chief wanted us to kind of facilitate Peter. And Peter's a lovely fellow and really easy to get along with. So we just became friends really, and we'd kind of guide him on certain things, and we'd let him go and spend some time with particular units if we felt it was appropriate. So we just became friends really, but I didn't start officially sort of advising him until I left the police and started to read his books through in draft form and advise him on sort of character and plot, and then from that, once we published Death Comes Knocking, the crime writing community got to hear about how I worked with Peter, and then they all came to me and asked me to do the same for them, and it's been like a full-time job ever since. Yeah, it really is. Yes.
And do you still advise him, or do you sort of hand him over to someone who's still in the police?
No, but I still advise him. I still go through his. Dave does a lot of the kind of development work with him because they've been doing it for years. But I go through. I'll pick up particular things, and I'll go through all his manuscripts twice, and just check them for authenticity. And we're always talking. We were talking the other day about plot and character and that sort of thing. Always on the phone to one another. But one of the things that I'm really conscious of is that I have been gone for a little while now, so I do have to make sure that my knowledge is up to date.
That's what I wanted.
And I keep in touch with a lot of current officers, a lot of retired officers, recently retired officers. I'm always reading and actually doing the work actually keeps you up to date because someone asks you a question, you think, I think I know what happens there, and then you go and research it and you find actually it's changed a little bit. So an example of that is when I was in the police, one of the discipline outcomes up until about 1996 included reduction in rank. So if you were a sergeant or above, you could be demoted.
Right.
That then went in 1996, and it actually came back at the end of 2020. And somebody, I don't know why I checked it, because somebody asked me, can you be demoted as a police officer? And I must have got a whisper or something, because I went and researched and I think about a month before the law had changed and you could again, after all that time. So actually doing the advising and being assiduous with my own research on behalf of other people helps me keep up to date.
Thank you for listening to part 3 of this 4-part interview with Graham Bartlett. Look out for part 4